Hello dear chess fans of International Chess School, and this lecture devoted to the method of simplification used in defense. I will show a game played in 1998 between international masters Mortensen, Elling and Adamski-Yan. I decided to show the whole game right from the beginning because of the theoretical importance of the game, and it is important to see that a kingside attack or a kingside PC superiority for white against the Paulsen variation of the Sicilian defense is not that dangerous as it looks. The game started with e4, c5, knight f3, e6, e4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, queen b6. A move introduced by the Greek grandmaster Grivas. The point is that attacking the knight from d4, black forbids for the moment bishop d3. So if white wants to bring the bishop on d3 and to exert pressure on the king's side, he will have to deal with the threat against knight d4. He has to move the knight as he did in the game, or to defend it. But bishop e3 is not possible, while c3 will take away the knight square c3. Knight b3, queen c7. Once the b file closed, bishop e3 becomes a real threat. So black goes back to c7. The purpose of queen b6 was fulfilled. Now the knight is no longer centralized on d4, is on a rather passive position on b3. Bishop d3, knight f6, knight c3, a6 prevents knight b5, but sooner or later black is ready to play b5 himself. Not only that helps black to bring the bishop on b7, but the b5 pawn can also advance and misplace the knight from c3. Shot castle, d6, f4, and Paulsen and Scheveningen variations. The battle is around the e5 square. White has already a preponderance in the center. He has an occupied square, the e4 square, while the other three squares are neutral. But once that he manages to push e5, it will open the dangerous bishop from d3, and it will increase his central advantage as after e4, e5, white will be able to centralize the knight on e4. So two important ideas. Black has to defend against e4, e5, and at the same time he has to take care of white's light square's bishop from d3. Exchanging that bishop has to be one of his leading ideas in the game. Knight bd7, queen e2. White is reinforcing e4, e5, b5, bishop d2, bishop b7, rook ae1. Now the threat of e4, e5 is imminent, so black decided to push b4, knight d1. Now in the absence of knight e4, the central breakthrough e4, e5 loses strength. So black afforded to play bishop e7, knight f2. Unfortunately for black, the knight is ready one more time to jump on e4. It looks very dangerous. I faced this kind of position many times in my life, and even if the position is balanced, we know that with the help of chess engines, over the board it is very scary to see that local forces superiority on the king's side. Anyway, before black commits himself to the short castle, he has to create first counterplay on the other side of the board. And remember that timing is very important when you are defending actively. And simplification or defensive exchanges are making part of active defense, because you don't simply defend your weaknesses. You don't hold the lines. You are trying to advance and exchange the most dangerous pieces. And in this case, as in many open and half-open games, the king's bishop is the most dangerous piece. Of course, it is easier for the defender to exchange a bishop than a knight. a5, not only that prepares a4, it supports b4, and maybe later on bishop a6 will be possible, a very important idea. Knight d4, white goes away with the knight and uses the consequence of black's last move. Short castle, a very brave decision, but as you will see, in the absence of a knight on f3, this attack against the focal point h7 is not that dangerous. But the knight is not far away from f3, from where it can jump on g5. e5, d takes e5. It is important to exchange on e5, because the rook from f1 is hampered for the time being by the knight from f2, and after f takes e5, white will lose the additional attacking possibility of f4, f5. F takes e5, knight d5, and knight g4. This is the critical position. It looks very threatening. In such positions, the usual freeing move, the last resort defensive move, is f7, f5. But white is threatening exactly knight f6, after which f7, f5 is no longer possible. f5, it doesn't work yet, because e6 is hanging. But which are the consequences of white's last move? It opened up a7, g1 diagonal, which allows queen b6. This is the first move that has to be considered. It's a forcing move, and it has a secondary important idea. Besides, it attacks the knight from d4, queen b6 prepares, bishop a6, exchanging the light squares bishop. You may ask, why not knight c5? Knight c5 has the same idea, but unfortunately deflects one of the defenders. The knight was just fine on d7, creating pressure on e5 and defending f6. Now knight f6 would be possible. You can't move knight c5 until you considered the forcing move, the next forcing move from your opponent. Now g takes f6 will lead to a disaster. Bishop takes, king takes, queen h5, king g8, rook f3, and there's no hope for the black king. It will be mated, and neither knight f6 helps, since after e takes f6, bishop takes, bishop h7, king h7, rook takes f6, we have a similar combination, as the rook is untouchable due to queen h5, and then the other rook lived along the third rank, queen h5, rook e3. But probably king g8 would be good here, but it is very difficult to spot such a move during the game. For example, knight e4 also loses. Queen h5 check, king g8, and rook h6, opening the lines against the enemy king is the idea used by white here. At the same time, he will create local force superiority. G takes, bishop takes, and unfortunately after f5, which is the only move that defends g7, notice that g7 is the focal point from where the king from g8 will be mated. But after f5, queen g6 check, king h8, knight takes e6. White will regain his sacrificed rook, and it will remain with an extra pawn. Queen h7, queen takes, king takes, bishop takes f8. Anyway, it's just a small advantage for white, but such long forced lines are difficult to calculate, especially when you are in defense. And I can tell you that in such positions grandmasters would like to avoid moves like knight f6. For this reason he played queen b6. It is forced, and it has the additional idea of bishop a6 exchanging the most powerful piece from white's camp, the bishop from d3. c3 was played. If queen e4, defending the knight and threatening mate, on h7, black has a nice tactics based on the same vulnerability of a7, g1 diagonal. He can simply capture on d4, queen takes d4, bishop c5, regaining the queen and remaining with a healthier pawn structure. There is an old aphorism which states that as long as the game approaches the endgame in the Sicilian defense, black will be favored. It is the case here. So after queen b6, white preferred c3, b takes c3, b takes c3, bishop a6, right in time as the bishop can't be saved. The queen will be hanging on e2. Now rook f3 was interesting. Bishop takes d3, queen takes d3, knight c5, queen c2, and once e6 defended, actually it's defended twice, black can launch f5. This is meant first to disrupt white's pieces coordination, and secondly to bring the rook from f8 into the battle. E takes f6, bishop takes. Now the pawn weakness from e6 is compensated by white's pawn weakness from c3. Rook h3, g6, bishop h6, rook f7. Rook f7 is a move which belongs to the passive defense. In passive defense, the main principle is economy. Each piece has to have a goal in defense. We have to play economical moves and to design a task for each of our pieces. Rook b1 and queen d8. The position may be assessed as equal here. After bishop a6, white preferred king h1. Unpinning the king. Bishop takes d3. Queen takes d3. Knight c5. Again, the same idea. Defense e6 and preparing f5. Now it would be risky for white to play knight h6. It is true, it is a forcing move. It has to be calculated, but it leads nowhere. After g takes, queen g3, king h8, bishop takes h6, rook g8. Black is just in time. He's attacking the queen, so white won't have the time to capture the pawn from f7. But after knight c5, queen g3, knight h6 became a real threat. Timing is very important when we launch the active defense. One more move, a passive move from black's part, and everything will be over. Just the last moment, so he has to launch the typical counterplay. f5. E takes f5. Again, remember that when we defend passively, we have to use the economic principle. Now g7 is only once defended, so the difference between bishop f6 and knight f6 has to be clearly defined. We can't take on f6 now on general grounds. We have to calculate. Of course, we would like to preserve the dark square's bishop, but after knight f6 we can't move until we calculate white's forcing move. The bishop from e7 is undefended, which means that it exists a pin along the e file, so knight f5 appears as logical, and probably white had this in mind when he played king h1. After e takes f5, knight h6, this intermediate move is a terrible blow for black, because after king h8, the only move, rook e7, white is connecting the rook and the queen in attacking the focal point g7. This is a clear advantage for white. So the only move remaining is bishop takes f6, knight takes. First black exchanged the bishop from d3. Now he exchanged the dangerous knight from g4. Remember that this knight has a long trip, and it was exchanged for a bishop which moved only twice, which makes it a favorable trade. A knight which moved 50 times against a bishop which moves only twice. Knight takes f6, bishop h6, and again it is the moment for passive defense. Which move do you choose? The rook from f8 can't defend, because he already has a task. He has to defend the knight from f6. The other rook has to defend his fellow from f8, so rook a7 is out of question. The other remaining defender is the queen. In this case, queen b7 is the right move. It takes one more time the e4 square under control. White played bishop c1, knight fe4, queen e3, queen d5. Look how, with the help of a defensive move, black managed to improve the position of his queen. He's dominating the center. The e-pawn is there, he's ready to advance, and black has a preferable position already. a3, queen c4, threatening mate. Knight f3, rook a d8, queen e2. Now white is the one who defends. He aims to exchange queens in order to reach a slightly worse endgame, but where he has good drawing chances. Queen takes e2, and now after rook takes e2, now takes e3, black's advantage was minimal. In this case, I think he could have, after queen t5, he could have found another plan which doesn't involve the queen's trade. He should increase his central superiority. The game ended in a draw here after rook takes e2, knight takes e3, rook c2, knight 3, e4, bishop e3, rook f5. Summarizing, you have to assess the position, you have to analyze the position from the opponent's perspective. Try to put yourself in his shoes and see where he intends to attack. And after you realize that, in order to relieve the pressure, to decrease his attacking potential, try to exchange the most dangerous pieces. And in this game, it was the light square bishop, the king's bishop, which was the key piece. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Till our next lesson, best wishes.